Okay, good.
Test.
Hello, everybody. This is very loud. Okay. Hello, hello. Hi. Well, the timer hasn't started, so shall we just go? Okay, cool. Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome to the next session. We're going to talk about what makes unicorns from a brand and marketing perspective. What makes that special, and why is it different to all the other brands we see out there every day? We're going to start with quick introductions. My name is Tim Ringel. I'm the founder of Meet the People. We are an agency group with around 800 souls on board, primarily sailing in the US and Canada, so 1/3 in Canada, 2/3 in the United States, and we do everything from creative to content, experiential, media, data, you name it. And on top of that, I have been investing in pre-IPO startups for over 20 years. Some of them very well known, and that's why sometimes I get asked for advice or do these kind of panels, because I'm blending my marketing knowledge from building agencies for 30 years with investing into unicorn brands. And I was lucky enough to be part of Spotify and Airbnb and Palantir and Lyft and all those kind of brands before they IPO'd. And this is why I'm talking about this topic today. And I have an amazing panel, but I would like for you guys to introduce yourselves, and then we're going to kick it off with some questions and hopefully some nice discussion. So I'm going to give it to you first.
Sure. I'm Melissa Rosenthal. I'm the co-founder of Outlever. We turn companies into the #1 news source in their industry. But for the majority of my career, I've been at the helm of growing really big challenger brands. And what a challenger brand means to me is, at least at the start, everything is working against you. The wind is not at your back, and there's every adversity that is kind of shifting the way that you would operate. And you really need to figure out how to break the mold and operate new playbooks in order to grow that company and scale it to hypergrowth. And a few of the companies I've been a part of, BuzzFeed is a digital publisher. I was one of the first 10 employees there. And by the time I left, it was valued at over $1 billion. I went on to go help start a company called Cheddar, which is a live media news network. We sold that in 3 years for $200 million. And then as the chief creative officer of ClickUp, I joined when that company was Series A. It's a work management startup. And now it is valued at over $4 billion and about to IPO. So my passion is really growing challenger brands and really building that mentality of how to think about things in a contrarian way and scale.
Hey everybody, my name is Bassem El-Rahimi. I lead Turo's business here in Canada. So just by way of intro, what Turo is, we do a peer-to-peer car sharing. So we enable folks like you and I to either put their car up on a platform to rent it out and make some money, or the other side of that coin is you could be a guest and rent some really cool cars. I've been with Turo for just about 8 years now. I joined the company before it started on its international expansion. I was one of the very early members of our international organization. And over the past 8 years and a bit, Turo's been in market for 12 years now. We've over that time become the largest peer-to-peer car sharing network in Canada and as well globally. So it's been a really exciting opportunity. When you talk about challenger brands, I remember when I first started at Turo, the first time I would tell somebody, oh, you could put your car up and somebody could rent it. And then it'll be like, that's illegal. Like, well, I'm absolutely not doing that. So that was really the starting point of when I first started at Turo. But now today, more and more, as I met people today, like, oh, I've tried Turo and I loved it. Music to my ears. So excited to talk about all things brand building.
Hello, sorry. My bad. My name is Bill Neff. I'm with Yeti Coolers, or Yeti. We make outdoor gear and equipment. Coolers is kind of where we started, and drinkware and bags and cargo and a whole bunch of stuff. Been there for 9 years. And prior to that, I got to Yeti through my time at Under Armour, and I was there from 2003 to 2009, kind of in that early startup phase where we were really ramping up. Spent some time at Sika Gear, which is a hunting apparel company in Bozeman, and then found my way in to Yeti.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, we definitely have the right panel from my perspective. So amazing to have you all here. So I want to start with probably a thesis that what I've observed is that most unicorn brands or companies that scale actually really fast, and for me, scaling a business to $1 billion valuation within 10 years from, I think that's pretty fast. I think most of those success cases are driven by some kind of community, right? So I would like to learn a little more about your experiences with what kind of campaigns work best for you on the back of your community that actually, again, because paying for impressions usually is very costly, and community, that's probably earned rather than paid. So I would like to talk a little bit about campaigns that you really enjoyed or were success for you when we're talking about community-driven campaigns. So whoever wants to start. You want to go?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. Yeah, I'm a big believer in just sort of, and they aren't even really campaigns. It's just sort of third-party avocation. I'm a big believer in trust through trusted sources. And it all starts with like, for us that have like a literal product, and whether it was at Under Armour where I really learned this philosophy, to Yeti, it's like we make a product that we're hoping is relevant to an audience. And to intimately know that audience, and if your product is relevant to them, then you have kind of the seed of growth, or you have an opportunity to grow. And so for us, it isn't a, hey, we're gonna go and do a campaign here. It's like we're ongoing in our community work. And so if with Yeti, it started as a fish brand, and we were relevant to that community. And as we started to kind of find ourselves in the hunt space or the whitewater space or the mountain space or the ranch and rodeo space or the pit masters, none of them were campaign driven. They were all driven by the community adopting the relevancy of our product within the space. And then when that happens, then we go in and start really telling stories of them. So it's not, okay, you like us, we're gonna now tell stories of ourselves to you even more. So like, that's not the way we look at it. We look and celebrate the community and we start telling stories of them. And I think that philosophy from a community perspective is really how humans interact. Like it's just human nature to like want to talk about your friend or want to talk about the people around you in your network, and not just sit up in your network of friends and all talk about yourself all the time, because that is kind of a road to nowhere in terms of people liking you. And so for us, it's finding that audience that we can be relevant to, and then supporting them and bragging about them and telling stories about them. And when you do that, we think they start telling stories of us. And it's just this circular way. But that's ultimately the philosophy around Yeti and our community.
I think for a lot of brands that are not startup brands, that's very scary, right? Because you're using the feedback you get from consumers, or actually user-generated content, and you're blowing that up through your own means and your own marketing channels and whatnot. So I think that's probably one of the biggest differentiators, because you can break things and nobody's going to get angry at you. You're not going to get fired for trying new stuff. And that's probably one of the big differentiators that I've seen when we work with very large corporate brands compared to startup brands. Bas, you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. There's something you said I want to come back to, so I'm just saying that so I don't remember it in public. But one of the things that's been really incredible about building community at Turo is, first, our product is inherently offline. So what I mean by that is, to book a car on Turo, you're coming to an app or to our website. It's an incredible digital experience. We're optimizing it every day. But at the end of the day, that car is a physical product. You're going to meet somebody to do a key exchange, or you'll open the car remotely and take the car and go on that adventure. And so we've always wanted to lean into that offline component. How do we use that to our advantage? And one of the areas where we found tremendous success is with our host community. So the people that share their cars, it's a little bit weird. Most people don't do it. I mean, more and more people do it now, but you can imagine 5 years ago, it's a little bit weird. You might not tell people right away. And we started bringing these people together. And we hosted community events. We would host, whether dinners, parties, shows, sports games, whatever it may be. And it truly was magical. And I really cannot understate that enough. The power of seeing these folks that have a common affinity, which in this case was car sharing or monetizing their vehicle, meeting one another, getting to know one another, being inspired from one another. It was incredible. And we've done that for quite some time. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, offline events in general, when, it didn't exist. And I really felt a moment of pride and kind of almost product market fit when when the world opened up again, our hosts were bombarding us about when is the next community event. They would be like, hey, in my city, they removed restriction. Can you guys come next week? And, our offices are in Toronto. We're, almost everywhere in Canada. And that sense of bringing people together was really, really powerful, because then not only have they been able to find new friends, new business partners, co-hosts, we noticed that they started bringing people into the event because they were advocating the brand, but people wanted a little bit more. For Melissa to put her car on the platform, she wanted to hear a little bit more than just me. She wanted to come, see the event or come meet the people. And that's really been a cornerstone part of building trust with that community, is bringing these folks together and making sure that our management team is also there. We're going to be there every step of the way. You're trusting us with your, the second most expensive asset you own for most Canadians. So the fact that they know they have an in with the management team, or even just the company at large, was really incredible at kind of building that trust that is hard to lose as long as you kind of continue with that consistency.
So is most of the user-generated content or adoption of that into campaigns or whatever you do digitally, is that from the hosts or from the drivers? From the hosts?
So it's both, actually.
Okay.
So on the host side, these folks build businesses. So most people start with 1 or 2 cars, and then before we know it, they're at 50 cars. So that is a full-on business. And so they create videos on how to build operational processes, the tools that they use, and so on. And where I was going to pivot to what you've said is broadcasting those success stories. So we used to tell people, you could make X sharing your car, or you could build a business. And sure, you'll trust it, but it's a bit clickbaity. You're like, oh, that's a big number. Can you really do that? And then we just turned around and started broadcasting the stories of our successful hosts. How much are they making? Why are they hosting? And these stories just went like wildfire, especially, because the other piece of that really worked in our favor is we weren't going after the Globe and Mail or CNN. Of course, we would take those outlets if they, would take us. But we went to small regional newspapers and news outlet, which they were a lot more hungrier for content. It's a local relevant story, and it just spread like wildfire. So now not only we got the earned piece, but we were able to kind of leverage our own content via amplifying their stories.
Yeah, I always liked the business model because you don't have the hotel lobby telling you can't rent out your downstairs apartment, right? So that's what happened to Airbnb right now. So besides maybe the car rental companies, the only people who could get upset about your model, but they are not really a lobby. So that's great. And your assets are moving.
They do lobby.
So you can just, you can park it somewhere else, register it in a different city. They're trying to lobby against it. Yeah, probably. Okay, so next to you.
So I can just start from the BuzzFeed perspective of it, which is a little bit different. We were built and kind of operated on very early, just very driven by community. I actually started to work there because I was a part of the community where I would see my content get featured on the homepage of the website. And when I started working there, we decided that our community was such a big part of our growth story that to have a separate entire team just dedicated to enhancing our community and getting people to post content and featuring that content across the site, and doing whatever we could to show viral success out of that content. So community was just, very early stage, I would say, what UGC was. It was pure UGC, and we had an entire team operating on that because we really felt like that could be the biggest driver of growth for us. Before I worked there, I was staying up all night trying to produce content that was as good as the editors that worked there. So it was just really driven by community all around. And I think that really did shape my entire thinking as I moved through these other companies. And at ClickUp, we're a software product, but the users that are a part of it are rabid about it. They love it. They talk about it all the time. And we really focused on how do we highlight them? How do we bring them along for the journey? And we did that in many different ways. One was just even through our advertising. And I hate the word campaign. I think it's a dirty word. I think we should get rid of it and throw it away. It's more of this always on storytelling. And the way that we thought about it was we marketed like a B2C company. We incorporated them into our narrative. We played to the things that were their pain points, the things that they were struggling with at work, and we made it funny. The goal was to make them laugh. And really bringing the things like, we would do UGC things where we'd ask them, what's the biggest problem at work? And we would create content around that. We also started to highlight them and feature them and their stories within our content itself. And then we did the opposite. We brought the online offline, and we started hosting community-led events around the country and around the world. So it really was a core to every single strategy at every company I've been a part of.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I wonder, I guess the world is kind of separated into, and you don't like campaign. You said I don't like the word of campaign. I tend to agree because, it's also better for us agencies to have evergreen ideas we can follow on. But in the end, the world is kind of separated into organic and into paid, right? So I wonder, do you pick certain user-generated content pieces or certain pieces that worked really well organically and then amplify it with paid? Is that no? Yes?
Not really.
Okay.
We generally let we've tried UGC. For us, we let UGC be their story, and there's no reason to hijack their story. Like, let it be. And so we kind of leave it alone. But because like I said, we talk about it, but there's always feels like an agenda when we're like, okay, let's take your story and see if we can. So at least Yeti doesn't do that. But there's a lot of it for us, and we just let it go.
Yeah. Okay, that's one approach. And Bas? That's a good one. I agree. If you have enough, that's amazing. But I also sit in enough boardrooms and talk to CMOs, and they always say, like, we need more, right? And
I'm in that camp.
Exactly. That's
more.
Right. Not talking about any company would IPO in the future, but
I don't want
just saying.
I just don't necessarily like we don't strategize on how to amplify the UGC that's out.
Okay.
So we tried, and it's very challenging to do. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, buying impression gets expensive, especially over time. And we still do, we still experiment. We have influencers out there. We do amplify some of the actual user-generated content that, does happen organically, and we'll put paid dollars behind it. One of the really interesting ideas that we've tried this year is, instead of us, and to your point about an agenda, going to an influencer or an influencer agency and say, here's all the key messages and all the use cases that we want, we flipped the script. We just opened a campaign or a program called Pitch a Trip, where it's an always on kind of, always on for this year to date, and we'll continue to do it for the foreseeable future, where if you have an idea of a trip you want to do, or you're a content creator and you need a car to do whatever it is, pitch us on it. If we like it, we'll sponsor it, and we'll figure out some sort of monetary agreement if it makes sense. But kind of by flipping that script, first, sort of remove the onus on me and my creative team to figure out what all these angles, use cases, messaging are. We were just flooded with thousands of ideas. And then second, they were so incredibly motivated to do it that we didn't really have to negotiate very hard. It was like, here's the things that we want. And then every single one, I think we've done, I want to say 30 something so far. Every single one of them completely over-delivered. Like, they've posted way more than what we anticipated. They're continuing to tell the world. So I think that idea of not coming to it with an agenda, there is a dollar component to it, as you can imagine, but letting the user really kind of generate the content that they want to do and define their own angles has really been like game changing for us, and something that we'll continue to double down on.
And that's very smart. I'm going to steal that. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, at ClickUp, we tried everything. I would say, like, we constantly were experimenting, and we just found, like, with organic, UGC, there were just diminishing returns at scale for it. We were just constantly, it felt very forced, manufactured, and we didn't see the type of success that we thought we would. So we started just creating more like skit-like parody types of content that felt organic and felt UGC in a way, but they were manufactured by us internally. But it was more so focused on those real-world like pain points and the kind of things that would happen in the office every day. It would basically be something you would see on a comedy channel, and that worked way better for us than kind of just trying to push this UGC narrative.
Okay, cool. My next question would usually be metrics and measurement, but I find that's a little boring. So I'm gonna move on, because I'm generally interested in how do you, because in the end you have to measure, or you put it in your marketing success, right? And therefore you have to measure it. But as you don't have control over user-generated content and how it actually goes viral, I always find it a little weird to ask the question, how do you measure that, right? Because that means you're trying to control it, and you actually can't. That's, I think, the reality of it. So what I'm probably more interested in is, as the brand grows and slowly becomes relevant, how do you maintain authenticity for the brand? How do you do that? This time I start with you, Melissa.
Yeah, I'll use ClickUp for an example. Before we started to craft, I was there very early building brand, and it was, what is our North Star? How do we want to come across? And the goal is really to personify our product. And we kind of picked out these different human traits and what we wanted it to embody. And we wanted to, like, we wanted people to feel when they interacted with us, and how do we build a connective tissue to what that looked like when you were in product, when you were seeing an ad, when you were part of the community. And we spent a lot of time on that. And it's hard to like do that. And I sometimes don't recommend you actually do that until you've tested things. But our method was to kind of come up with this North Star and then just to test like exhaustively. And when we found the formula that really worked, when things started to resonate and we were able to build authenticity around that, because people felt like we were just this company kind of like, doing the things that felt like authentic to what we were trying to do. We would make fun of our competitors in a really authentic way. We would create memes, but they just were never forced. And I think that the sentiment, and we would do kind of brand sentiment tracking like all the time, but the way that we kind of carried and continued that tissue, we would evolve the narrative, but we never strayed from it because we felt like it was so core to our DNA, and it was so important to keep that tissue going. I mean, it's still going without me there, which is just a testament to the fact that it's working really well. They just created a series with these two HR guys. They are the most inappropriate HR guys on the planet. They sing like really inappropriate like onboarding songs, and it's amazing. If you haven't checked it out, it's incredible. They just had a video that got over 500 million views. So it became really kind of core, that human, that humanization of it, and that humor and comedy to what ClickUp is, and it showed it wasn't a deterrent to the growth of the company. Now valued at over $4 billion. So I think it felt like it was the way to keep the company growing, and it's still growing.
Yeah, I wonder, how does that impact how your team changes, right? Because of course, when you're small and a young company and you can break things step by step, you hire more people, and all of a sudden, all right, gonna have to review those people. And and they want more money and bonuses, and now I have to measure them. How do I measure that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, you can get away with a lot when you're a small company. And then
exactly.
When I started, I think there were 50 people. And when we started to hire and we were at, hyper growth scale, a few years in, we were over 1,500. So a lot of big name titles, a lot of opinions, which is also something you have to deal with. And then a lot of these creators that wanted, more money and equity and all these things. So yeah, those are things you all have to deal with. And that's, as the company grows and becomes more successful, that's just kind of the nature of the game. But it's really like dealing with competing opinions internally. We have to go enterprise. We have to go up market. We have to change our tone. It doesn't fit. But really again, like just going back to measurement and metrics, if everything's pointing up and to the right, like we're going to keep going. We're going to kind of ignore the opinions in the room because they're invalidated by the metric and the data. And that's when I think the data is really important, because it shows what's proving what's actually working. And I think opinions are great, but if the data is proving that something is working, like we can keep going with that and until it doesn't.
Yeah, I always say it's kind of not really democracy, right? Anyways, that's difficult to teach sometimes. Bas, what's your around? Sorry, I skipped a little. So authenticity of the brand. How do you keep that authentic? And you talked a little bit about your community of hosts, right? And it sounds that's really where it's anchored.
It is, and for us, it's been a journey, right? Like Turo's been in Canada for about 8 years. Who we were 8 years ago is not who we are today. So like any human, you change over that lifetime, and that doesn't mean you're less authentic when you're older because you changed. So for us, it was about understanding what it was that we were trying to do in that medium-term horizon, and what did that mean from a brand standpoint? What did that mean from a product standpoint? I really like the comment you made about kind of being rooted in that, the narrative or the story. And for us, at Turo, how we did that is, what did our product do better than other people? And for us, it was selection and convenience. And so those stay true. We were really authentic that to those two words in terms of, whatever car you're looking for, we likely have it. If not, we'll get it. And it's a very convenient experience. You skip the car rental counter, you get it delivered, blah, 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 blah. And so over time, I think our positioning, our tone, the campaigns that we did and our strategy changed over time. But I'd like to think that we kept that authenticity because it really came back to these reasons to believe and to what that product did well. Another thing that kind of, when I say it now looking back, seems like, oh, like we were so organized and we figured it out. That wasn't the case. So I'm just going to start with that. But every almost 3 years at Turo, we kind of did not necessarily a brand refresh in that we've changed everything, but we went back to our research. Is our research still relevant? Do we need to refresh our data? How do the consumers feel about us? What's new in market? Blah, 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 blah. And as we did that, that led to new campaign insights, that led to new brand positioning. And really, my job and the team's job that we're really trying to do is how do we kind of connect these two things back together? So, the world has changed, but our product is still kind of delivering on those same, reasons to believe or competitive advantages. And that's really kind of how we stuck to authenticity. So sorry, I rambled on. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's kind of how we
No,
thought
that's
about
fine.
it.
And that's what we want to do today. We want to ramble a little bit because it's all about learning, right? But so because you're multi-market global or multi-market global?
Yeah.
Okay. So how does that work
globally?
Sorry?
Multi-market, but globally.
Okay. So how does that work for you here in Canada? Are you pretty much independent in what you can do, or do you already get your narratives dictated by HQ?
Yeah, so Turo's in a very fortunate position that we're completely decentralized from a marketing organization. So I rarely had to run anything through our CMO. Luckily, him and I had a good relationship, so I still kind of did because I wanted to keep my job, but I didn't really have to. And that has incredible perks. You move faster, you can test things, you get multiple tests in multiple markets. But one of the topics of today's panel is how do you get from a startup to a unicorn? And with that comes processes. We're still a decentralized organization today, but there's a lot more things that are a bit more, processified. We've created systems, we've created workflows. So I don't know where this will end. I think it's a learning journey for me and Turo as well. But for any company that doesn't have a strong requirement to be centralized, the chaos of decentralization is incredible. There's so much learning that could happen. You could iterate much, much quicker. So if you're in a position where you're unsure about that, if there isn't a strong reason for you to centralize, let it roll. See what happens with decentralization.
Oh, I agree 100%. And that's always what I tell the teams when I build companies. So one of the companies I built was 3,000 people, and everybody was complaining that I was restructuring every 6 months. Not restructuring in terms of letting go of people, more like changing responsibilities and departments. And they were like, my job is always changing. I don't get it. I said, but the company is growing 50% year on year. So your job has to change, right? And trying to build the perfect infrastructure and the perfect central tools and everything being united and unified doesn't help you grow, right? So you have to make these steps depending on where the company is scaling, right? So I like that point. Bill, over to you.
Yeah, I think for us, and I guess my own personal experience is authenticity to me is it's kind of rooted in that founder story and why do we exist to begin with? And at some point, for Yeti it was Roy, and for Sika Gear it was Jonathan Hart, and for Under Armour it was Kevin Plank, and I'm a big believer in the DNA, and it's starting there, and who are these people, and it personifies to the brand. And at Yeti, Roy was always super humble, always curious, always had this nugget of specialness for what started that community building within the fishing space, and found a product because he was a diehard angler, and found the gap, found the product, stay rooted in it, support the community. And as we started to grow, for me, authenticity remains within the intimacy of the community you're in. And so we do a really good job of continuing to show up, continuing to listen, stay humble, keep learning, and as whether it's the fishing community still or a newer one like the skate community, we're all in different paths within these communities we're working with, but we're constantly listening. And I said this back a while, but we have 5 people on our brand team, and we have, I think, 17 or 18 people on our community marketing team. So we are constantly in with our people, being with them and staying intimate with those spaces. So I think that's the only way. And when you think about some of these great brands that lost their founder, kind of lost their way. And I think I'm such a founder guy that and I could never be a founder. So for all you founders, congratulations. I could never do what you do. It's crazy. But I love to associate and get the energy off of that type of spirit. And I have a lot of respect for it. So for me, I stay close to Roy, I stay close to Ryan, and I make sure what we're doing is staying grounded in that why we started this thing to begin with.
Oh, super interesting. Thank you. I think it's very interesting. I completely agree that a lot of companies that become successful very quickly the brand has a very deep association with the founder or founder team. And I think we have one big example, obviously, with Tesla and these companies where I think I read an article today, is Tesla actually a brand or is it just all Elon, right? So that's very interesting. I do believe that that interconnectivity, staying true to what the company is, has to do with the founder still being there. So yeah, very, very, very interesting. I have a question, kind of double clicking on building brand ambassadors. And you're not really building them because they bubble up through the community, ideally. But how do you and I'm not saying control, but how do you help those people? Do you have any examples? Because they're obviously, it's free reach ultimately. So you want to amplify that without commercializing it too much. And these brand ambassadors are absolute key. And it goes for, I think, most brands that blow up, right?
I'm happy to take that one first, one I have a lot of passion for. Brand ambassadors are incredible. And I think the goal is to not control them. I think that as soon as you start controlling them, it loses a lot of that spark and it pulls away from their motivation, because then are they an employee? Are they a contractor? Are they a brand ambassador? I think one of the things that, to zoom out, what does a brand ambassador look like at Turo? Leaning in on the host community, we have some of these hosts that become kind of local celebrities in the cities that they're in because of the businesses that they've built and their commitment to kind of help other people become hosts. And we didn't really know why they did it. Some people were doing it for free. Some of them started charging for courses and consulting. And we're like, what does that, what are you consulting on? And we went through an exercise of trying to understand what is the motivation of somebody to become a host brand ambassador when we're not intervening. Like, why do people do that? And we found two main reasons. First was a sense of kind of community and belonging. People wanted to connect with other humans that have affinity for what they do and kind of, building that, community again around kind of their lifestyle. And the second one is some of them wanted to be famous. Some people just wanted to be celebrities in their own communities. And we just leaned right into that. So it kind of goes back to the, content, or our own content that we did around showcasing what they've been able to do. For a lot of them, we started giving them like special statuses where we'll call them host mentors. They would come to online events, offline events. They would kind of have these special designations that kind of gave them that sense of being that celebrity. We treated them like, VIPs, rock stars, whatever you want to call it. And as a result, they couldn't shut up about Turo. Like, there's some stuff where it's like, oh, we can't quite say that. Or we just shared that, in advance to kind of give you a preview to make you feel special. And then, my legal team absolutely hated it. But at some point I was like, just let it be. We don't have any contracts with them. They're not representatives of like Turo. So they could really say whatever it is that they want to say. And we'll confirm what we want to confirm and then just let the rest roll. And for our legal team that was nightmare fuel. I thought I was going to lose my job because of that. But what ended up happening is that, because somebody says something, it's not going to go viral. Like, everybody around this room tried to catch a moment of virality. It is super hard to get a key message out there. So let them run, lean into it, lean into their motivations as much as you can. And truthfully, the better we treated them, the better they treated us. So even when they would be frustrated with some of our updates, we noticed that the more we talked about them positively and shined the line on them, the more they would come to us respectfully or in confidence being like, hey, this new feature sucks. Like, I cannot be talking about this, right? We need to change that. And we listened. Sometimes we would change the product. Some other times we had other reasons to do that. But to answer your question, it was really about understanding why is it that they're so excited about the brand? What are they trying to get out of it? And it could be as simple as them wanting to be a celebrity and then using our kind of marketing dollars and brand to kind of lean into that and give them a slice of that life.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. It's a great takeaway from my perspective, because every brand has these fans, right? These hardcore ambassadors already there. They buy a lot of product, and very often they're not really being allowed into the community. I'm thinking more traditional products, right? And making them feel special, giving them the VIP treatment, they just become multipliers even more, right? So I think that's a great growth hack. I like that a lot. Thank you. Yeah, Melissa.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it from a software perspective. So when I started at ClickUp, we had hundreds of thousands of people using the platform, and it's work management. So when you think about how much they're using it, they're in there all day. 24 hours a day. Sometimes people are doing operations, managing work, tasks. Their entire work lives in ClickUp. So thinking about that, and then as we grew to have millions of people on the platform, what we really wanted to do is sort of gamify it for them, make it fun. They're living in there. They're spending all their time in there. So we worked up an ambassador program called ClickUp Verified, where when they would complete certain things, certain tasks, certain time spent, they would be rewarded with things, both like online and offline, specific badges, and then giving them the opportunity to kind of opt into more. Because when we're thinking about like, how do we actually create a growth lever out of this, they're trying to show to, their internal teams, other teams within their organizations, how great this is for them. So what better way to reward them, for their work within the platform, but also allow them to show the other people and potential champions within the company how successful they are within the platform. So we really kind of built this very unique system of kind of gamifying it through the day. We would do like Spotify wrapped versions of like how productive you were this week, how many things you got done, how many cross collaboration tasks you did with the rest of your company. And it really was like kind of there's a duality to it. It was definitely like a self-rewarding system to make you feel good about yourself, but it also showed others within your whole company, how productive you were compared to them. So it kind of, shined a light on the people that were heroes within their organization. And I think there's always a talking point around like, how do you prove how hard you're working? ClickUp makes that very easy because you're able to actually show the work that you've completed. It's not in fragmented different parts of, Google tabs and Excel sheets. So we really wanted to kind of build upon that and allow our ambassadors to tell our story for us, and we did that through the program we created.
So basically competition, right? You create competition,
gamify it,
reward competition, gamify it. Okay, very cool. Bill, any hints on the ambassadors?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're set up a little bit different. So like for us, our ambassadors are set up more like what you would consider to be like a Nike athlete for them, and they're contractually obligated. We have about 200 of them. They're in all different pursuits. But they drive this sort of customer model that we have, which is, we consider kind of those ambassadors are the elites within any pursuit. They're the ones, doing Everest and all the stuff. And then we have this block underneath the elites that are these enthusiasts that are the ones that are hardcore, 30 days on the mountain skiing, fishing every weekend. And then we have these participants underneath these enthusiasts that, and I probably fall in the participant range. I have a lot of interest. If I could ski 30 days a year, I would, but I can ski like 3, just based on life. But I like my mental game is where these enthusiasts. So that's what I would do if I won the lottery tonight. I wouldn't be sitting here, and I'd probably be on a mountain somewhere. But like those are the things. And then we have this large group of spectators on the bottom. And we really believe in this customer model as far as like how that energy flows. And so we start with the ambassadors up top, and they're driving the relevance for the product. That's their sole purpose. That's the only reason. If our product is important to them, we believe the enthusiasts and that group of people there, it will be important to them. If it's relevant to the elites, it can be relevant to the enthusiasts. And they're looking to the elites for that. The participants generally don't look to the elites because they don't know them, unless it's like traditional sports and everybody knows who Patrick Mahomes is or whatever. But these participants in the outdoor space look to their enthusiast friends. It's this human network as opposed to, and this energy starts flowing, and the spectators are like, and we always get these questions. Well, why don't you go after the soccer dads and the soccer moms? And it's like, you're really defining people on sidelines watching their kids' soccer games. Like that's not really fair to them. And but we go. They all have these things that they actually like to do. But and so they probably up in that participant thing. But these spectators that may not hunt, fish, or do anything, they're just living off the energy that's coming down. So for our ambassadors, it's really about the energy train, and it's about starting the relevance for the product. I don't care if they post on social. I don't care if they do any of that stuff. Quite frankly, I believe their networks and the people that are writing stories about those elites will start that energy train, and then we'll let that thing run, and then we'll just tell stories about those people. And when we do that, we're just upping. It's not about Yeti being in their lives; it's just about their lives. And we just think this like circle of communication from them to us, from us to them, just starts happening. So that's how we use ambassadors in our customer model.
But those ambassadors, they're not Yeti sponsored.
They are.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So that's what I mean. Like,
okay.
So, and this enthusiast crowd is probably like what you guys would consider like diehard, like Yeti people. How we support them is we support the things that are important to them.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody's a fly fisher person out there and they love the Drake magazine, we advertise in the Drake because the Drake, not because we want people to know, but because the Drake is important to that community. So if you don't have advertising, the Drake's going to go away. So we want to support that. We do it through events. We do it through films. We do it through any of the things that are important to those communities. We want to support those things. So that's generally how we support that enthusiast crowd, is whatever's important to them, we support and make sure it stays alive.
Yeah, and that is completely contrary to how most large marketing departments operate, because you can't really measure that in any extent against the dollar, right? In this moment in time, it takes.
I will lose my job if that becomes the thing. Is like measure.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
we measure our top line, we measure our growth, we measure our revenue, and if it's not working, then we'll figure something out. But yeah.
Well, I'm asking that because I've seen recently, I think the last couple of weeks was a lot of debate on, there was a lot of focus in the last years post-pandemic on lower funnel, right? Because retail media, blah, blah, blah. Now we can measure even more conversions, right? Still the same people buying the same stuff. They're just buying it through different channels in the end. But reality is it's become even worse to talk about lower funnel than it was 20 years ago when Google started with lower funnel, right? So, and now articles are slowly coming back into the industry where it's like, well, some brands are not doing so well anymore because lower funnel kind of ate all the budget and you don't do anything on awareness anymore. So I want to hear a little bit about, like, how do you see that split in your companies or your company right now? And is there a change of heart, if even necessary? It doesn't sound so at Yeti, but maybe at the others. So I'm going to start with Melissa again.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in SaaS, we went through this growth at all costs thing a couple of years ago, and it was basically we don't care how much we can attribute back to any dollar, keep spending because we know that this will help us grow over time. And then, when funding wasn't free anymore and, interest rates changed, that entire conversation shifted to just efficiency at all costs. And I think the companies that did it correctly are the ones that understand that there's this balance between brand and long tail and the short-term CAC efficiencies that you need to prove over time, and efficiency at scale and all of that with campaigns or whatever you're running. But I think it to shift and to pivot so quickly and to lose all of that you're putting into long tail growth, especially if you want to be a company that's around in 10 years, it's just, we go through these cycles and everything is cyclical. When you look back, 5-10 years, this all happens time and time again. So I think the conversation shifted really quickly, and that's all we started to talk about. But the right answer is that you have to have that, that top of funnel brand to be able to really accelerate growth over time. And if you're only constantly thinking about short-term wins, that there's going to be a cap to that. And then when money is free again, because we know it'll free up eventually, and everyone's getting funded again, and there's more money to spend, you've lost a long period of time in growing your brand and growing who you are in market. And I mean, especially in tech, feature parity and tech parity, it's there. There's no differentiation in product anymore. I barely see it ever. You can catch up to products that have been around 4 years and 3 months now. And that's, so how do you differentiate yourself, especially in that space? And it's through brand. And I'm going to talk about this a lot more on Friday, but I'm a huge believer in that and balancing both.
I agree 100%. That's why I'm bringing it up, because it's extremely important not to forget that there's still a ton of either B2B customers or consumers out there who have never heard of your brand, right? And you're not going to build a new base when you only target the same people all the time, right, in the lower funnel.
And one more thing, it's 364 days a year they're not looking to buy.
That's right. Yeah. So, Bas.
I think any marketer in the room would agree that brand's important. I haven't met a marketing team or marketing leader who's nah, not interested.
Investors sometimes are
this is where I was going to go.
More conversions, more users. Come on, you can do it.
So really that conversation will stem from the C-suite. Starting with the CFO or somebody in the finance organization being like, why is marketing X percent of net, revenue? Bring that down. And what we've done, and so sorry, I want to also add before I kind of dive into what we've done, the idea of they're only buying once a year. The average Canadian, regardless of Turo, books car rental twice a year. So it's a very low frequency product. How do you stay top of mind all year round when we don't necessarily know when those two trips will happen? And so this is going to sound really kind of, basic, but when we were challenged around, you know, our brand spend, we had to kind of sit with our executive team, our legal team, our finance team, and say, okay, let's, you know, put the numbers aside for a second and do a little bit of education. And it sounded crazy, but it was like, nobody's going to convert on Google if they've never heard of Turo. They need to at least hear of us before they're able to convert. And I'm seeing a lot of people nodding, like it's a lot of common sense. And our CFO was like, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. And I was okay. So it was like, okay, we got one thing down. Like we now understand that brand awareness is critical. And then so, you know, working down the funnel to show that, you know, it is all connected. And of course, you know, these people are very well educated, very well experienced. They know all of that. But being told that in the context of the businesses that they're in, you know, it was very eye-opening to be like, okay, so now we're all on the same page. And then it worked from what do you need to see in the numbers to get that philosophical kind of point of view for you to believe it. And it was really interesting because we had MMM models. We had all of the data we could get. We would walk our C-suite through that, and it was just like right over their heads. It was like, okay, it sounds like you did it right. Like, great. And really, once we got to like, what is it that you need to see? And it really came down to top of the funnel growth. Like they were like, we don't really care. Like it's important for the marketing team to know, but like our CFO didn't really care what our brand health metrics were as long as our revenue was growing. I was like, okay. So, you know, there's a time lag behind that. Like what would be acceptable from you? And we really build our entire reporting model around the purse. You know, he had, you know, at the end of the day, he got to decide what his investments look like. And we learned what language he wanted us to speak to be able to get this across the line. We, of course, still do all the reporting on like what our MMM is saying and what our brand health metrics, because, you know, the rest of the marketing team needs that. It helps us be better at our jobs. But I think the education piece is something that I had kind of taken for granted. And having gone through that experience with Turo, I would start there. If, you know, my next gig, if I'm, you know, leading marketing in another company, that would be my first 30 days is just sit with those folks and like, okay, this is how I'm seeing it. Do you see it this way? You'll likely get the yes. Okay, so now we're on the same page. What do you need to see to kind of greenlight that investment? And you'll save yourself a lot of heartache.
And just really quick on that for us too, I believe lower funnel is the best place to really understand brand energy. Like we look at that top funnel, mid funnel as demand creation, and we look at the bottom funnel, lower funnel as demand harvesting, and we split it that way. If that harvesting is taking long, we believe there's not enough energy for the brand, and so that's kind of that volume we're looking at. It's not revenue, it's not anything, it's energy.
So the lesson is try to understand what, let's say, the C-suite, how they think, what their language is around, how you can then build a model that actually translate that into stuff marketeers understand, right? No matter if it's MMM or conversions or blended CPAs, whatever we want to call it, day to day in our little departments and whatnot. But ultimately, I agree, it's usually the CFO who pushes, spend less money, but give me top line growth, right? So that's usually the game. Well, we are running out of time, so this was a lot of fun. Thank you very much. And I don't think we're going to have time for questions, but I'm sure you're going to find all these three later here in the room and in the next sessions across town. So thank you very much. Really appreciated your time and all your great input. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.